Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Frogs Insider podcast. I am Melissa Treebwasser, alongside my host, as always, Jamie Plunkett. The reason that I am leading off the show, though Jamie normally does it, is because we are going to get into baseball, and that basically means you're going to get about 38 minutes consecutive of me going, yeah, I agree. Yeah, he looked good. While Jamie gives you far more information than you ever knew you needed on TCU baseball, which is not a bad thing whatsoever.
I'm not that long-winded. I'm kind of long-winded, but
We're both of the extenuating wind situation.
fair.
So yeah, but I'm not saying it as a negative. I'm saying it as a nobody has more information on what TCU baseball will look like this spring than you, and so we're gonna just kind of let you run, and I'll ask you some leading questions so that
Perfect.
because I get lonely just sitting here, and I think that's important. But before we dive into baseball, we have some business to take care of. First and foremost, as always, we want to thank our friends at the Flying T Club. The Flying T Club is an organization that not only supports TCU athletes, but the TCU and Fort Worth community as well. Donating to the Flying T Club not only helps TCU compete at the highest level athletically, but also know that you're doing a good thing, as it is one of the few nonprofit organizations around the NIL space and college athletics. It also helps us get the things that we want and that we need in order to be the best version of TCU athletics that we can. And though we are seeing imminent changes in the future with what NIL looks like and means like, the Flying T Club is not going away. And so it's still important that we as TCU fans support that great organization, and we of course appreciate that they support this medium organization over here at the Frogs Insider podcast. So as always, we thank the Flying T Club. We encourage you to support them, and we will continue to speak wonderfully upon them in our podcast space and beyond. We'll have some cool stuff coming up this spring. We have a whole new batch of Flying T Club athletes with the new season, and hopefully you guys will get a lot of information, a lot of opportunity for us to talk to them for you. Speaking of talking, we do a lot of that here on this podcast, and we do it thanks to our friends at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, who hosts the Republic of Football Podcast Network, which not only gives you access to Frogs Insider and the best TCU athletics information on these here podcast web servers, but also every Division I football team in the state of Texas. That means if you want your ears to bleed, you can go listen to Gambling Gauchos or Between Two Bears. If you care about the G5, there are podcasts for SMU. Oh, I guess I can't call SMU G5, but we can still think of it as G5 in our hearts. UNT, UTSA, and more. Lots of amazing content. You could subscribe to the Republic of Football Podcast Network and get it all in one place. Or if you just want to listen to the Frogs Insider podcast, we have our own feed on Apple, Spotify, and of course our YouTube channel, where I'm going to guess is going to be one of the few places you can regularly get post games from the baseball season, because I know you'll be out there just about every day. I will be out there quite a bit, and we will be posting those post game recaps on the regular. So make sure you're subscribed to our Frogs Insider YouTube channel if you aren't already. Like, rate, subscribe, review, do all of the things, push the buttons. We certainly appreciate the support of all of you. I know I speak for Jamie when I say it is among the highlights of my day when somebody comes up to shake my hand, introduce themselves, and say thank you and appreciate what we do. They don't say they hate me in person. I don't know if you get
anybody
any.
hates you.
Yeah, or you. Like I said, I don't get a lot of negative comments in person. I don't get a lot of negative comments right now, anyways, which is nice. But you know, if
Because
you
you
hate,
paid Elon.
It's
You
good.
paid,
Yeah,
you
you're right.
paid Elon off to delete all the mean comments about you.
That's
all
what
the
it
mean
is.
tweets.
You
Yeah.
know me. But
Hey,
you know,
billionaires flock together. And you've
yes.
got that
Yeah.
Sacramento Kings blog money now.
I've got the
so-
Sacramento Kings blog money, and you know all the billionaires go into education. That's where we all come from.
They couldn't afford De'Aaron Fox anymore. They had to pay
Yeah,
you.
they had to pay me. That's exactly what's happening. Jamie's giving me a hard time because we are both paying attention to this Mavs Kings game that's happening
I'm
in
not
Dallas.
paying attention. I had it on for a minute just to see if Patrick Dumont actually showed up, and the coward did. I'm impressed.
It's quite the sea of turncoats there courtside for the Dallas Mavericks. We suffer together, Jamie. We suffer
True.
together. You just haven't endured this kind of suffering recently, and you don't know
Time
the
out.
true pain.
I haven't endured this suffering from the Mavericks
True.
recently. I am
You're a
also a
Cowboys fan.
Dallas Cowboys
Yeah.
fan. Let's be very clear about that.
You are a Cowboys
So,
fan. Speaking of suffering, Jamie Plunkett, TCU basketball, men's basketball, went up to Ames, Iowa on Saturday. Real short recap on GoFrogs.com. Can't say I blame it. Rough day for TCU, who started the game very out of sorts, and continued the game very out of sorts. And Iowa State just ran all over TCU at their home stadium with game day in attendance. And we thought this might be bad. I don't know if it was worse, but it was bad.
It was bad. It was. So think about it this way: game day was there, right? You mentioned that. Iowa State had been on a 3-game losing streak in conference play, which they had been ranked 3rd in the country prior to this losing streak. All 3 of those losses had been by double digits. They were without Milan Momcilovic, who is one of their better big men, kind of a stretch 4 guy.
Yeah.
And
great floor spacer.
So like all of the things kind of came to a head on Saturday morning up in Ames, where you just kind of had this gut feeling that this was going to be a get-right opportunity for Iowa State. They got Momcilovic back, and they just beat the brakes off of TCU. They won by 30. What was it, 82-52, something like that? And it was close for about 8 minutes, and then it just wasn't. And, the conversation on the board has been a lot along the lines of, wow, look at what TJ Otzelberger has done in year 3 or year 4 at Iowa State, and here we are, year 9 of Jamie Dixon. And I think the complaint is valid, but I also looked at 2 teams on Saturday, one of whom is playing 8 guys who are sophomores or younger, and one of whom is playing one of the oldest rosters in the league, and that's just kind of the result that bears out. Now we can debate how the teams got into those positions and why, and who's to quote unquote blame or who's responsible for that. But the reality is that Iowa State is fielding a much superior product to TCU right now, and they proved that on Saturday.
Yeah, you mentioned it's a get-right game. I got a text from our friend Levi over at Wide Right Natty Light in the middle of the second half. Of course.
He never texts when Iowa State's losing something. That's crazy.
No, I don't hear from him often during football games in most recent history, with some exceptions. But, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, TCU had to be our get-right game. And I was like, Levi, of course TCU was your get-right game for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Game day was in town. The stadium, give them credit. I mean, that environment is outstanding. I would love to have that for TCU basketball, men's or women's, at some point in the near future. But this was, as you said, a perfect storm, an opportunity for TCU to get absolutely run, and they got run. Not a single player scored in double digits. Turnovers continued to be an issue. Rebounding continued to be an issue. More missed dunks, which is about to be the thing. Because I remember when TCU didn't have a guy on the team that could dunk. That it was a rarity for it to happen. But now we have all of this athleticism, and still, I would say, average over a missed dunk a game, which just seems just absolutely insane. Again, I feel like we're a broken record at this point. We identified TCU's potential issues back in October. We saw those issues come to fruition in November, and they continue to rear their ugly head throughout this season. I think perspective is really important. I think we know who this team is and what it's capable of at this point, as we've also mentioned previously. The onus is to play the young guys, and we've seen that. I mean, Trey White's minutes have been cut as he has struggled. Bauer has thoughts on Trey White, apparently. Sorry, Trey. And this now Jamie Dixon has to see what he has and see what he can keep together for the future.
Yeah, this is the first game this year that I didn't write a post-game recap for it. I was at baseball's inter-squad that morning, which started around the same time as the basketball game did. I went to the women's game after that, and ended up writing about the women's game because it was a nice win over Texas Tech. And so, that's kind of just where I am right now. I was like, hey man, it is what it is. But they have an opportunity on Wednesday, I think, for a win. They play Oklahoma State, who's got the same record as them, struggling in conference just like TCU is. And this is one of those ones where even in a year like TCU is currently having, this is a team you got to go out and beat. These next two really against Oklahoma State and Arizona State are two that you've really got to go and get. Arizona State's so decimated by injuries right now. And Bobby Hurley, from what I understand, his seat is basically lit on fire at this point over there. So you got to get these next two just to keep Pet's heads from falling off, but that's kind of where things are right now for the Frogs.
Yeah, go out and win the games that you should win. Maybe you get another upset to close out the season. That's a possibility. Maybe you win a game or two in the Big 12 tournament to try to keep some positive momentum going. I think an invite to the NIT would be a massive win for this program, but it's certainly not guaranteed. They've got some work to do. And like you said, that starts on Wednesday night against Oklahoma State at home. The crowd has responded to the play in kind, which is disappointing but not surprising. And it would be nice to get some support out there, and show that there is a bright future potentially in Fort Worth at Schulmeyer Arena for Jamie Dixon's program. But I think the thing that's really hard for fans right now is there's so negative guarantee that you are going to see, like a bad season could decimate your roster once again, and that's why we're in the position that we're in. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Like, I hate to skip ahead 3 weeks here, but to see how Jamie manages the roster at this offseason, to see who comes back, to see what they do in the portal. But that young core is so promising and so exciting. I would love for them to continue and add Bug Edwards this offseason. You have the makings of something really, really fun next year. But you got to keep some positive momentum, win some games, show some guys what their future roles are going to look like, and give them an opportunity to play for better or for worse.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Iowa State being one of the oldest teams in college basketball. Well, TCU boasts one of the other oldest teams in college basketball on the women's side. You mentioned a nice win at Texas Tech. It was one of the ugliest games that team has played this season, and they still won by 21. Just absolutely choked the life out of the Red Raiders, which they did in Lubbock as well. I believe Brady said in the postgame that 5 out of the 8 quarters these two teams have played, TCU has kept Texas Tech in single digits. That is an absolutely ridiculous stat. They have that team's number on the defensive end. It's a really great matchup for them defensively, but we saw some of the struggles that happened up in Manhattan against Kansas State plague the Horned Frogs early on in the game in Fort Worth against the Red Raiders as well. They obviously watched some film, and they sent that kind of delayed trap to the ball handlers, but blitzed Haley Van Lith consistently. She didn't score in the first half of a game. It's the first time she's done that in her TCU career, and potentially in her career altogether. Had a pretty solid second half, but TCU got great minutes from Taylor Bigby and Aaliyah Robertson, who is becoming one of the best shooting post players in women's college basketball right now. She's been an absolute heater. It was 4 for 4 from behind the arc in that game against Texas Tech, including a bank shot that really surprised her. She had that look on her face of, I can't believe I missed a shot that, it went in. Okay.
She covered her mouth because she was laughing, I think, because she ran back down the court, which was pretty funny to see.
Yeah, she's great. So, not the cleanest offensive game. The big three of Van Lith, Prince, and Connor combined for their fewest point total of the season, but TCU won by 21. So this is one of those teams that is so overwhelming that they can have their best players play poorly and blow out medium to bad teams. They'll have another opportunity to do that Tuesday night against BYU.
Yes, and Mark Campbell was very, very straightforward after the game in saying that he would have taken every single one of those 3-point shot attempts again. And he was right to say that because they were wide open looks and they just didn't fall. And sometimes that's going to happen, and sometimes you see a couple of your teammates miss and yours start to rattle out as well, and just momentum kind of slides in the opposite direction. But yeah, they were generating incredible looks, and if you think about it, they knocked down 4 or 5 more of those like they normally do, and all of a sudden you're talking about them winning by 30 instead of 21, and it's nice to know that this team is so good they can have an off shooting night like that and still just clamp down and beat a team by 3 touchdowns.
An off night and like a just abhorrently bad night. I mean, that's the worst shooting night of the season.
2 of 14 from 3-point in the first half. They were shooting under 30%, I believe, after the end after halftime. Like, it was an awful shooting night, and they still got it done. They still won. Nice.
Well, and a couple things that stood out to me. Number one, Madison Connor took a late in the shot clock 3-pointer late in the game because she wanted to and nailed it. And you could see her confidence kind of get back up a little bit late. And then Aaliyah Robertson, just as a consistent scoring threat, is such an important piece. There were some things, Haley Van Lith picks up her 4th foul with, I think, about 5.5 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, sits for a minute, and then goes back in with 4.5 minutes and immediately fouls out. At a point where they were up by 15, I think in a more high pressure situation would maybe sit her for another minute or two, or let the team play it out. Let them play without her on the floor. The one thing they did when she was missing is they really did move the ball super, super well. And I think that because it kind of took Texas Tech's trap off, and so it opened up some other opportunities. They didn't lose any ground with her off the floor. In fact, they increased their lead down the stretch. But we haven't seen the dominating performances from Connor Van Lith and Prince over the last couple of games, but we know that they're capable of it. They'll have a tough, quick turnaround here for that Tuesday night game against BYU, and then they'll hit the road for a pair of games in Arizona, and they'll just stay out there for at Arizona and at Arizona State over the weekend and into next week. So it's a tough stretch of the season. They are through the hardest stretch of it. They moved into a tie, first place, with Kansas State having the tiebreaker thanks to the Wildcats' loss at Oklahoma State on Wednesday night as well. I think Saturday afternoon. I don't know what days are. There are things. So TCU's right back in the thick of it, and I have spent a lot of time analyzing the schedules of all of the contenders because I'm trying to figure out when TCU is going to play in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament and if they'll have a shot to wrap up a regular season title before they go to Waco and Baylor. And I really think it could come down to that game in Baylor. That absolutely could be for a regular season Big 12 championship. The Cats have a tough stretch. They have to go on the road to Morgantown still, I believe, before the end of the season. TCU will get West Virginia at home. That is a ranked Mountaineers team. Baylor has probably the hardest road remaining as far as strength of schedule. They still have West Virginia and Kansas State, but they will get TCU at home in Waco. That'll obviously, especially if TCU has a shot to win a Big 12 title, that crowd is going to be absolutely lit. So that's a game I'm really looking forward to. I'll definitely be making the drive down I-35 for that one. But right back in the thick of getting that number 1 seed. They're number 10 in the net as they drop to number 11 overall in the rankings, but still top 10 in the net. A great opportunity to get a 2 or 3 seed here in the tournament and host a couple of games, and that's what they're playing for at this point.
And I mean, you can't really ask for much more.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, they're 22-3, right? Like They haven't dropped a game they should have lost yet, and that's year two of Mark Campbell,
and haven't lost at home. 16-0 at home, something they've never done before. Have a chance to go 17-0 at home, and I do want to mention Mark Campbell basically said, "Give my team a sellout here." You've got 3 opportunities to do it, Frog fans, before the postseason. You've got BYU on Tuesday. That game against West Virginia will be absolutely massive for the program. That's going to be a big one. And then senior night against Houston. So if you have not checked out a TCU women's basketball game, this would be a great time to do it. Any of those 3 games, or heck, all 3 of them. It's a great value too. So you're not gonna break the bank buying tickets and bringing the whole family.
Mm-hmm. You really won't. I mean, my wife has taken our boys and some of their friends a couple times, and it's a great experience, great family atmosphere. Gets pretty loud and rowdy. It was loud and rowdy in there on Saturday afternoon. It's a good time.
But like pleasantly, like Era's tour, loud and rowdy. Like you're not gonna have to worry about any negativity from the opposing fan base or anything like that, which is also really nice. But it's fun. It's spicy, but it's a good kind of spicy.
Indeed.
Let's talk a little baseball, Jamie,
Let's do it.
because we have official frog ball this week. Friday night
true.
Coming up, just a couple of days away by the time you're listening to this. TCU will head west out to one of the most beautiful campuses in America, in my opinion, the University of San Diego. That school looks like a mission. It is absolutely gorgeous. To play 4 games against the Toreros. University of, I think they're Toreros.
Toreros, absolutely
yes,
right.
Yeah, actually, I know my California universities. This is going to be a big weekend. There is a lot still for this young team to figure out. There's a lot of positions up for grabs. There's a lot of freshmen that are going to get the opportunity to play big innings. So you're going to break it all down for us here. But the first thing that I want to ask you, Ben Abel is a little bit banged up. Do you expect him to get a start this weekend? It's expected to be maybe the anchor of TCU's weekend rotation.
TBD. I know on the last episode I said, he had a little bit of a scare a couple weeks ago and had been cleared, was good to go. The plan for him this past weekend was for him to throw 2 innings on Saturday. I went out there and watched, and he only pitched 1. His velocity was down around 87, 88, and then they pulled him after that inning. So right now I think it's up in the air. Do I think he starts a game this weekend? No, I don't think so. Do I think that if he is feeling okay, they give him an opportunity to maybe give them an inning, just a live action, see a rep or two. I could see that happening. It all depends on how his evaluations go this week and how he's working on recovery and if anything else crops up. But I don't think that there's a definitive answer one way or another quite yet. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't play this weekend. I wouldn't be shocked if he came out and gave an inning or two. So it's the first weekend of the year. It's not great to have a guy like Ben Abelt of his caliber not 100% heading into the regular season, but at the same time, you also understand that you're playing 50-plus games this year, 60 if you're lucky, and you want him to be healthy in April and May if he's not going to be healthy in February. So taking it slow with him and taking it easy in the first weekend is not necessarily a sign of long-term challenges, but also you don't want to create long-term challenges by rushing him out there before he's ready to go.
Who would you expect to get the starts this weekend, especially with that fourth game kind of being a unique opportunity this early in the year?
That's a good question. I think right now, with Ben kind of up in the air, I would say Caden Parker and Tommy Lepore are your 1 and 2. They both pitched on Friday afternoon in the inter-squad game. They both looked phenomenal. Tommy was up to 98 with his fastball pretty consistently. Cademan was touching 96 with his. The off-speed stuff was working for both of them. One of the things that Caden Parker's been working on this offseason is pounding the zone. He issued too many walks last year. He was out of the zone too often last year, getting deep in counts. And so what he's really tried to do is just be more aggressive in the strike zone. And he was that on Friday. It was really good to see. So Parker, obviously, coming back to his senior year, had an opportunity to go play for the Brewers last year and opted to come back. So that's a really big win for TCU. And then Lepore coming in from Wichita State, cut from the same cloth as Peyton Tolley, and wearing the same number as Peyton Tolley, acts the same way, smiles the same way, is just kind of big and beefy. He just throws right-handed instead of left. And so Tommy Lepore, I think, is going to be a fan favorite. I would expect him to get one of the starts. And then the other two starts are going to be kind of interesting because I think there are three guys that are probably up for one of those starting roles right now. One of them would be Cole Klecker. He's dealing with a little bit of an injury. I don't expect him to pitch this weekend as well. But Luis Rodriguez is a guy who I think has had a pretty steady fall and winter. Haven't seen as much of a third pitch from him as I probably would have liked to by this point in his career, but the cutter works, and when the cutter's on, he's unhittable. So he's one of those guys that maybe is going to get an opportunity to start against San Diego. Two other guys are freshmen. And these are two arms that I've been particularly impressed with since they got on campus. The first one is Mason Brassfield. He was the number 54 overall player in the 2024 recruiting class, according to Perfect Game. He's a left-handed pitcher out of Bakersfield, California.
He's out of the armpit, huh?
Uh-huh.
Poor kid.
Yeah, and he fastball up to 94, 95 from the left side. Really good off-speed stuff. Has great command. He's a guy I anticipate, if not getting a start opening weekend, probably being a starter somewhere down the line this season. And then Trevor Baumler, a kid who was the number 80 overall player in the class for 2024, out of Dowling Catholic in Urbandale, Iowa. I don't know how
they find these guys.
I don't know how John DeLora does it, where he finds some of these kids, but Trevor Baumler, incredible player, two-way player, right? So we're going to talk about another two-way player out of this freshman class here in a little bit, Noah Franco. Trevor Baumler is every bit a two-way player as well. He's got great stuff from the right side. He's a good outfielder. He was swinging a hot bat as anybody this fall. Cooled off a little bit this winter, but he's still swinging it really, really well. He's another guy who I think could get an opportunity to start this weekend against San Diego. So I think TCU, despite the injuries to Abelt and Klecker, they're still in pretty good shape when it comes to starting pitchers. And this is why you stretch out 7 or 8 guys. This is why you don't just set your rotation in the fall and roll, because you never know what's going to crop up. So I think the pitching coach, Dave Lawn, and Kirk Sarlos obviously have done a good job of getting a lot of these guys ready for longer stints. And with the 4-game weekend, like you said, it's a lot of opportunities for arms to get out there and show what they can do. So I'm really looking forward to those guys getting out there and pitching. Whoever ends up starting or in whatever order, I think they're all going to be ready to rock.
It's Saturday night. TCU is up 6-4. It's the bottom of the 8th inning. There's a runner on second base, 2 outs. Who's Kirk Sarlow's call into the mound?
What inning did you say it was?
Bottom of the eighth. 2 outs, runner on second, 2-run game. Who's getting the 4-out save Saturday night?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Before this past weekend, I know things were trending towards Lepore being a starter.
Yeah.
Before this past weekend, I would have probably said get Tommy Lepore out there and just let him get those 4 outs for you. But with him probably starting, I would have to go with Lucas Shin. I would go with Lucas Shin or Braden Sloan. Shin, a transfer from Washington who doesn't really throw a fastball. He's more cutter, slider, changeup, curve, and keeps you off balance. Had a really good Sunday. I loved the inning he pitched on Sunday. He mixed his pitches well. He was pounding the zone. He kept guys off balance. Struck out some of the meat of TCU's lineup. He's a guy who I think would get one of those kind of back end high leverage opportunities. And then Braden Sloan, who we've known for a while, big lefty out of your part of the neck of the woods up there in Northern California. And, I think he's one of those kids who we've seen him stretch out at times and perform well, but I really think his stuff is well suited for shorter stints. He's got a good fastball. He's got a really good slider when he's locating it well. And that's all you really need to get outs at this level in late innings. So I would say one of those two guys, and then wild card probably Mason Bixby. We know he throws at 100 miles an hour. It's just a matter of where it's going. He's located really well. He's worked his slider and his curveball in a little bit more this spring as he's recovered from injury that kept him out for most of the fall. And he's another guy who I watched on Sunday morning throw a pretty strong inning. He came in and gave the Frogs an inning early on in their scrimmage and looked pretty good. So I think they've got some good options, and I think the really good thing about non-conference play is that you have the chance to experiment a little bit. So you can throw Lucas Shin back there on Friday night. You can throw Braden Sloan back there on Saturday night. And then, hey, if Shin gave you a good Friday, go back to him on Sunday. If he didn't, go to Mason Bixby, right? You can play around a little bit with this bullpen and see who gives you what on any given moment.
How many guys do you feel confident that Kirk will feel confident going to in that bullpen? We've heard a lot of names. We know there's a ton of guys on this roster that can throw innings. How many guys do you expect that we'll see pretty regularly this spring?
I mean, if you're looking for a number,
make you count live on air, prove that you can.
15, 16.
That's a lot.
I just counted 16 names, including Abelt and Klecker. So like I have my little list written down here. If you're watching on YouTube, that's why I'm looking down. I've got 7 names under starting pitcher, right? Because you think, all right, this weekend they've got 4. You've got 4 games a week, basically. So 4 of those guys are going to start, and then the other 3, realistically, would probably move into a long relief or a high leverage role, depending on who it is. So realistically, like if Louis doesn't start, he's probably a long reliever one day. If you're going to a bullpen game on Monday, he's probably going to give you 2 or 3 innings. But realistically, I mean, out of the names that I just counted, I counted 16, like off the top of my head. Really 17 if you're considering Caden Smith as well, who I've watched pitch all fall and in winter, and they've all looked good, right? They've all shown moments of really, the ability to do it. And so I think that you've got a deep pitching staff this year that Kirk can go to. The key there is that it's young, right? A lot of these guys are freshmen. A lot of these guys transferred in. And so how are you going to react when the lights turn on? How are you going to react in that game situation? The TCU's tried to simulate that as much as they possibly could over the fall and into the spring. But it's no thing like the real thing to get out there and see what's going to work out for you. So I think early on we're going to see a lot of different guys get opportunities. I mean, I just counted 17. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw all 17 of those kids pitch this weekend, frankly, except 15 of the 17 without Ben and Klecker. And just see where it goes from there. See who earns a spot. All of these freshmen are really talented. I mean, TCU, this freshman class was the number 6 overall class in the country, according to Perfect Game. D1 Baseball had them at number 8. I think Baseball America had them at number 9 or 10, right? This is a consensus top 10 recruiting class coming in, and you're going to see a lot of these freshmen play early. So really looking forward to some of these arms that are pretty young and for people to get a good look at them.
Speaking of freshmen that could play early, we're going to see a lot of those guys out in the field. You mentioned last week, Anthony Silva is probably the only one that is a penciled in or sharpied in day one starter at his position. Expect Carson Bowen to take a lot of the reps at catcher as well, but we'll probably split some time. Who do you expect to see roll out there in that starting 9 on Friday night when the Horned Frogs open the regular season?
I think we've got a lot more clarity now than we did last time we recorded. Just being out there the last, Friday, Saturday, Sunday watching, I think that the coaching staff has a lot more clarity than they did maybe a week or a week and a half ago. You nailed it. Carson Bowen and Nolan Traeger are going to split time behind the plate. I wouldn't be shocked at some point, maybe not opening weekend, but at some point to see Jacob Silva get some at-bats. He's been swinging a really hot bat as well. Obviously, freshman, younger brother of Anthony Silva. Kind of your third catcher, really, at this point. First base is going to be Isaac Cadena, Ohio State transfer. He played in 30 games for Ohio State as a freshman last year, started 20. He comes in, he's able to catch, he's able to play first base. He can give you a little outfield, although TCU's already got a logjam out there, so I don't foresee him playing too much outfield. I think first base is really where he's going to end up because they want his bat in the lineup. He's a good defensive first baseman. Behind him at first base is Camden Sauce. I wouldn't be surprised to see Sauce get some time at first base. He's been working out there predominantly all fall. He moved over. He was mostly third base and second base last year. I saw him take some. He played an inning or two at second base on Sunday, but for the most part all year he's been playing at first base. He's kind of the primary backup at first. So you got Isaac at first as the starter and Camden as the backup there. Let's go to Silva at shortstop. I think that's pretty solidified. I'm going to save second base and third base for last here because I think that those are the two positions that are most up for grabs still. Sam Myers is going to start in left field.
And left, okay.
Yeah. I mean, he had a pretty good throw from left field. Out of all the guys, I would say his arm is the least strong. Of the outfielders, it's still a pretty good arm, but left field is suited for him. And he had a good throw. I mean, he kept a runner from tagging at third on a play on Sunday. He had a really nice throw, and maybe it was Saturday. But Sam's going to start in left. Chase Brunson's going to start in center. He is fully healthy off the back surgery this offseason, and he looks healthy. He's swung. I think he's had the best fall of any hitter. He's been swinging an incredibly hot bat. He had 2 more home runs this weekend. Jeez. One got out before I could look back down at my phone to open up Horned Frog Blitz and go it was gone. It was gone. I looked down and then I was up and it was already, I think it knocked somebody out in the bullpen. And then right field's going to be Sawyer Stroh-Snyder. I think Trevor Baumler's going to get a lot of run out there as well. Again, 2 freshmen kind of taking over one position. Baumler, I already mentioned as a pitcher. Right field is probably where he's going to find most of his time as an outfielder, unless he's playing a little left if they're trying to give Sammy a day off. But Sawyer Stroh-Snyder's another kid. Just looking back over at the rankings, 101st overall player in 2024 class out of Weatherford, local kid, played for Brock, played for the Dallas Texans in the select circuit. And just an absolute stud. Swinging a hot bat, really good defensive outfielder, crazy strong arm. You're going to see him in right field a lot, and then Baumler backing him up a little bit. Noah Franco, I think, is going to be your primary DH to start the season.
That's what I was going to ask, yeah.
He has been mostly getting reps in left and right field, but I think right now he's probably going to end up DHing. He hit an opposite field home run. He's a left-handed hitter. Again, 2-way player out of IMG Academy. Reclassified from 2025 to 2024. He was the number 1 overall recruit in 2025. I think finished in Perfect Games ranking as the number 7 overall player in 2024. He had a 3-run home run on Saturday or Sunday that was on a pitch inside, off-speed pitch inside that he hit 360 feet opposite field. He's so strong. He's incredibly strong. He swings a really good bat. I think he's going to end up DHing to get it started.
Primarily, I'd imagine DHing over playing the field because of his role on the mound as well, and not wanting to wear him out too much as a true freshman.
He's a name I didn't. He's a name I didn't even count in the pitching count a couple minutes ago. So add him to the list as well. He's going to do a lot of long relief, I think, this year. I think when it all settles down, we'll see Ben, Cademan, and Tommy as the weekend guys, and we'll see Brassfield and Baumler probably as the midweek guys. On a rotating basis, and then Franco and Louie and and Klecker will kind of fill in as needed. Spot starts here, long relief there, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so let's go to second and third base for a second, because I think these are kind of where the real positions are still up for grabs, and I think it's generally between three guys. At second base, you're looking at Jack Bell, Texas A&M transfer, who's a defensive first kind of guy, has swung a pretty good bat since coming back from Christmas break, but is a defensive first player. He in the fall, I probably would have penciled him in as the starting second baseman. I still think I'm kind of leaning in that direction. But the question is, who ends up starting at third base? And I think that'll impact who ends up starting at second base as well, because Preston Gamester has come in and he had an incredible fall. He's a Paris College JUCO transfer, got 2 years to play. He's a junior right now. Defensively, he was excellent. He was swinging a really good bat. Cooled off a little bit since Christmas. And Cole Kramer, a Washington State transfer who's coming in as a senior, has also had a really, really good fall. And so you've got three guys. Gamester's really more of a third baseman. He's tall, he's lanky, has a really good just feel for playing third base. And then Kramer and Bell's more of a second baseman, middle infielder, can play a little shortstop as well. Kramer can play either. And so I'm really curious to see, because all three have put together good off seasons, what the decision-making looks like for Sarlos and for Bill Mosiello when it comes to which bat do they want in the lineup. Do they want lefty versus righty matchups? Because Gamester and Kramer are both right-handed bats. Bell is a left-handed bat. What their thought process is there. If I had gun to my head right now, I would probably say that Bell gets to start at second and Gamester gets to start at third. But I could easily see Cole Kramer starting at either of those positions as well. It's just a matter of what the coaching staff is feeling in any given day. So I like the depth on this team, though, top to bottom, and I think they're in a really good spot to make some noise this year.
Let's talk a little bit about the lineup. I'm not going to make you go 1 through 9, but the key positions. Who do you anticipate is going to lead off to start the season for TCU?
I think it's Sammy's job to lose.
Yeah.
Sam Myers, just the way he got on base last year for this team, and all the numbers across the board from TCU's bats were down last year. Mm-hmm. But Myers was the most consistent guy at getting on base outside of Logan Maxwell and Luke Boyers. And Maxwell and Boyers are both gone, right? Yeah. So Maxwell's obviously transferred to Arkansas. He's a guy that TCU will see the second weekend of the season over at Globe Life, so that'll be an interesting reunion. But Myers, I think, has shown this year his ability to get on base. He's taken really well to Bill Mosiello's coaching style. He's taken really well to Bill Mosiello wanting to be aggressive on the bases as well. And so I think Myers is a guy that can get on base early, create some havoc on the base paths, and open things up for the guys behind him in the lineup.
Who's going to be the meat of the order, your power, your extra base hits at 3, 4, 5?
So here's the thing. I think your power is really going to start at 2. I think Chase Brunson's going to be there right behind Sammy, and he's swinging such a good bat. If you want to move Brunson to 3, I think you probably – gosh, do you go Silva at 4 or do you go Silva at 2?
Silva
somewhere
at 2,
around there.
Brunson at 3.
And then it's probably some combination of Stroh-Snyder, Franco, Cadena could probably hit up in that half. I mean, this is a really fun lineup. If you want to spread some of that power out, though, I would be really interested in seeing a guy like Gamester hit in that 4 or 5 spot and almost reset what you're doing with 1, 2, and 3. So maybe you go like a Myers, Silva, Brunson, Gamester, and then you follow Gamester up with, Cadena, Stroh-Snyder. I don't know if you want Stroh that far down in the lineup, though. And then Franco's still got to get in there somewhere. The power bats, though, are very clearly Brunson, Stroh-Snyder, Franco. I think those are going to be your 3 most consistent power producers in this lineup. Cadena has pop. Silva, we've seen, has pop. Carson Bowen has pop. But, Bowen launched one the other day, too, that looked effortless. But I really think that if you're talking 3, 4, 5, I would probably say something along the lines of like a Brunson, Stroh-Snyder, Bowen, Stroh-Snyder, Franco, Cadena, some combination.
A
in
lot of
there.
youth at the top of that lineup.
Yeah.
A lot of youth, in which we've seen a lot of these freshmen get out to really strong starts and then kind of settle in, hit the wall a little bit, and kind of that mid-April. So it'll be interesting to see it. Being highly ranked, like you said, is one thing, but showing up and doing it when the lights are on is different. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure on these young guys to perform both in the field, on the mound, and of course at the plate if TCU is going to accomplish its goals and get back to Omaha this summer. I want to give you a couple of over-unders for this weekend, okay? 4-game set. Stolen bases. If I set the line at 10.5 over 4 games.
What's that? A little over 2.5 a game?
Yeah. But you could totally see a Moe's Yellow team stealing like 5 in like game 2.
Yeah. I'll take the over.
Take the over?
In 4 games, I'll take the over on 10.5, yeah.
Okay. Home runs. 3.5.
Ooh, I don't know much about San Diego's ballpark, but if you're setting 3.5 in 4 games, I'll take the over.
Taking the over.
I like the way these guys swing the bat, and I think they're gonna pop early.
Shutouts thrown by TCU's pitching staff at 0.5.
0.5? See, I think San Diego's got a good lineup. I mean, they finished 21 in RPI last year. They're defending WCC champs, projected to be number 1 in their conference again. I think they've got. I respect San Diego too much. I think they're going to score every game.
Okay.
I'll take
taking
the
under on that. Extra base hits over a 4-game set. I'm going to say, let's go 13, including home runs.
Including home runs? I'll take the over. That's 3 a game. A little 3.25 a game. I'll take the over. I think there's an opportunity, and the thing with teams like San Diego is they've got so much really good depth up front. I mean, they got a Golden Spikes watch list guy. They've got a 2-way player who's coming back after an incredible freshman year. 2 of their weekend starters are both of those guys. They're coming back. And so you've got some really good top-end talent on this roster. The question is going to be how deep does San Diego's pitching staff go? And I like the edge for TCU in that regard. So by that Monday game, I don't know who San Diego's going to roll out. I don't know who TCU's going to roll out either. But I think from just a talent standpoint, that's where we're going to see TCU maybe have the edge is late Sunday on Monday. And so I think those extra base hits may come backloaded a little bit, but I think they get the over.
Okay, lots of youth in this lineup. You mentioned San Diego's got some pretty decent pitchers. Strikeouts over a 4-game set if I go 15.5.
Sorry, one more time?
Strikeouts over that 4 games, 15.5 for TCU. How many times does TCU strike out? Not how many strikeouts do they throw?
Ooh. I mean, that's less than 4 a game.
Yeah.
So I'll probably take the over on that. You're going to have a lot of swings, probably a lot of swings and misses. Not too many. But you're going to see TCU be patient and be selective at the plate a lot more this year than you did a year ago. And so that's going to lead to getting a little deeper in counts, getting into more 2-strike counts, maybe more favorable 2-strike counts, right, like a 2-2 or a 3-2. But still, I think the average strikeouts per game per team in college baseball is like 6 or 7. So I'm going to take the over.
Yeah, I probably set that way too low. I probably should have said like 19.5.
If you had said 19.5, that'd been close. I would probably still say over though. Over. Yeah.
Let's go. The most important stat: wins at 2.5 in a 4-game set.
Over. I think TCU takes 3.
Yeah.
I think TCU takes 3. Yeah.
What is the thing that you want to see this upcoming weekend that's going to give you, it's early obviously, but it's going to give you the most confidence for the early part of the season? What's the one thing that would make you go, okay, this is something I needed to see happen game day?
I'm really, really interested in how this freshman class responds to the games actually meaning something, to the games actually counting, because that truly is going to define TCU's whole season, is how well this class plays, how well these sophomores play as well. Because you're relying a lot on freshmen. I mean, we talked about Noah Franco, who's probably your day 1 DH, Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, who is starting in the outfield. You've got Nolan Traeger, who's going to be asked to catch maybe 25, 26 games this year and hit pretty frequently as well. You've got Brassfield and Baumler and Nate Stern and Andrew Carter and Zach James, Cade Uni, Caden Smith, all freshman arms that are going to be relied on quite a bit this year as well. So if your freshman class isn't up to the task, then that's going to tell you which way your season's going. So I'm very interested to see how the freshmen play. That might be a little bit of a cop-out answer since I'm talking about a group instead of a single player. I mean, if it's single player, if it's one player, I want Cademan Parker to go like 6 1/3, striking out 7 or 8, locating in the zone, giving up maybe just 1 or 2 runs. If he can give TCU that kind of performance out of the gate as a weekend starter, that gives me a ton of confidence going into the rest of the season as well. Because if Cademan Parker is locked in as your number 2 guy behind Ben Abel when he's healthy, I think that's going to set you up really, really well down the road.
Talk a couple of big picture things for the season. TCU baseball picked to finish 4th, right, in the preseason Big 12 baseball pool. Third, okay. Mm-hmm. So do they finish higher than 3rd, lower than 3rd, or where they were slated?
I think they finish in the top 3.
Total cop out.
I think that, yeah, totally. All right, fine. I think, man, Oklahoma State's loaded. They're so talented. They lost a lot, but they still kept a lot. Arizona is sneaky good. I think they're a dark horse to make some noise in postseason. I don't even remember who finished 4th. I think it was, I don't know. I don't think it was Tech. I can't remember. Houston and Baylor are not good at all. I don't think they're going to have good seasons. Texas Tech, I've got major questions about because of so much roster turnover the last few years there. West Virginia, new coach, no J.J. Weatherholt. They lost their starting pitcher, their ace from last year's rotation. Cincinnati's one who quietly could be pretty good. UCF, I think, could be pretty good. I don't know a ton about the Utah schools, Utah or BYU at this point. But I know that BYU's got Ryder Robinson, former TCU player, out there starting in the infield for them. And then Arizona State's another one I'm really curious about. They've missed the postseason the last 3 years under Willie Bloomquist, but that's a program that is generally very proud of its baseball team. They just announced that they're going all the way to 34 scholarships for baseball. Yeah. They talked about that last week, and so I'm interested to see how they do as well. And Houston, I think I've already mentioned, probably not going to be very good this year. They lost too much. I think that's everybody. I think that's all 14.
Oklahoma State picked to finish 1st, Arizona 2nd, TCU 3rd to get one first place vote. Behind them was West Virginia 4th, Texas Tech, Arizona State, UCF, Kansas State, which is always a sneaky problem for TCU, Kansas, and then Cincinnati at 10th. Houston, Utah, Baylor, BYU. So
yeah, Kansas State lost a ton as well. I mean, losing Kalen Culpepper and the pitcher who I can't remember his name off the top of my head, like that's for a team like Kansas State, that's losing a ton. They still bring David Bishop back, who I think is going to be more of a consistent player in their lineup this year. We'll see. We'll see about it. That's the thing though with up and down the Big 12 is like you see the potential in like 9 or 10 teams. The goal as a conference, I think, this year has to be to get 7, 8 teams in postseason play. They haven't had more than 5 in the last 3 seasons. The last time this current construction of Big 12 teams had more than 5 make the postseason was like 2019, I think, when they had 7. So you gotta get teams in the postseason. A lot of conversation across the country about who the dominant conferences are. In college baseball, it's pretty clearly the SEC and the ACC right now. Those teams had all of the 8 programs in Omaha last year. You don't want that to be a trend. Yeah. You just don't. And I think the Big 12's got the juice. I think it's got the teams that have kind of the tradition and the history. But those teams have to step up this year. So Oklahoma State, Arizona, TCU, I think, are the big 3. West Virginia Tech, maybe. Kansas State, maybe. UCF, maybe. I'll be really interested to see where that kind of second tier levels out for the Big 12 this year.
So getting back to TCU specifically, they've got 54 games on their schedule this fall. If I put the over-under for win total at, let's call it 36.5.
Oof. So that would be 36 would be what? 36 and 18?
Yeah.
18's a lot of losses.
Yeah. But very young team, some questions at who's going to be starting at pitcher, and like you said, potentially a pretty solid Big 12 schedule
Yeah.
this year.
I mean, they don't play Oklahoma State, right? They don't play Kansas State in conference play, except they play them once in Globe Life.
Globe Life, yeah.
They're
They're at Texas Tech, at Houston.
Both winnable series.
Yeah, at UCF, at Arizona.
Those two will be tougher than Tech and Houston. I think Arizona probably is the toughest weekend they play this year.
At Tech is always in Lubbock is always tough in that little bandbox.
I think this
stadium.
TCU team has more ability to go power for power with Texas Tech in their own place. Again, depending on the freshman class, but I like TCU's overall power and gap to gap power this year much better than I have last year's team. And I thought last year's team was plenty talented. They just never put it all together. Who else? They don't play West Virginia, I believe, in the regular season. So, I mean, right there, you're missing the number 1 team and the number 4 team in the preseason polls. So, the non-conference is strong, right? San Diego is a really good team.
Some sneaky
Southern
Tuesday
Miss
games.
is a banger of a weekend. I hope Frog fans show out for that one. Getting Southern Miss to come to Fort Worth is so cool. Such a good team. Obviously, you play DBU a couple times. Those are 3 teams that could be sleeper super regional teams right there. The weekend in Globe Life, obviously with Michigan, Kansas State, and Arkansas. Gosh,
Midweek
30
series with Air Force.
Fun.
Yeah.
Should be 2 wins.
Yeah. Fresno State, which is not the Fresno State of the early 2000s.
No, but still
pretty
a
dang
solid
good.
G5 program. A solid G5 program. 36.5 is what you said it at?
Yeah.
Gosh. I'll say over. I think this team puts it together. I think they're really confident right now. I think they're really close, just from like a culture standpoint. They are, the coaching staff has to like tell them to go home, right? And I don't think that was at the same level. It's at a different level this year than it has been in years past, where you've said that about TCU baseball teams. So I'm trying not to overglaze here or be too high. I'll take the over on 36.5. It could be like 38, 39. I just 18 losses is a ton.
Yeah.
For a team this talented. And the way the schedule plays out, especially in conference this year, I think benefits them a good amount.
Is anything less than making a super regional disappointment for this program this year, or does the youth kind of say temper your expectations?
That's a good question. I mean, I think for TCU baseball, the expectation is always going to be host a super regional, right? I think that's just kind of the baseline is, hey, you have invested in the program in a way that makes you're probably right there on the cusp of being one of the top 16 programs in the country pretty consistently, top 20 program definitely. As far as resources go, as far as talent acquisition goes, as far as coaching staff goes, facilities, all the other stuff, right? Fan base support. So I think the baseline for TCU is competing at a super regional level. And there's no doubt that last year was disappointing. Even if TCU had eked into the tournament and not been one of the last teams out or the very first team out, that still probably was a little bit of a disappointment, even if they make the postseason last year. So, yeah, I think if you finish third in the Big 12, you might be hosting a regional at that point. You're probably, because you're TCU, hosting a regional at that point, which gives you the inside track to a super. So, yeah, I would say anything less than a regional final would probably be a letdown for TCU this year.
What are your personal expectations? Does the team have a chance to go to Omaha?
I think so. I mean, I think if everything clicks at the level of talent that they have, yes. Will everything click every day for this team? No, they're really young. And I think we're probably going to see some speed bumps along the way. We're going to see some of these freshmen hit walls along the way, especially the arms. It happens every year. And I think that's why I think the thing that helps me kind of overcome that obstacle just mentally as I look at things is the fact that there's so much depth, right? The rosters are still at 40. Now, next year when you go down to 34, you can't maybe keep 22 pitchers on your roster. Yeah. But this year you can. So you might as well. and just give as many of those freshman arms some early run as possible so that they've got their sea legs under them come end of March and April when you're really pushing for seeding and positioning in the conference standings.
Jamie, we just did 35 minutes on TCU baseball leading into opening weekend.
I could do 2 more hours if you
I know
want.
you could. I'm going to log off and let you go ahead and do that. But we're really close to my bedtime. I am so excited for this team. I think that there's nothing quite like baseball at Lupton. If the weather ever gets nice again, we had that one beautiful day. But when that starts to hit about 80 degrees for the 3 days that we get it before full summer hits, being at that ballpark, listening to Los and Mo, it's such a great environment, such a great atmosphere, and a really, really easy team to root for too. Like you mentioned, just a lot of really good, fun characters on this team, good dudes. It'll be fun to kind of watch them grow up and just unbelievable talent. Like you will be entertained out at Lupton Stadium, but this is not normally a thing we have to work hard to get people excited about. TCU baseball seems to draw them in pretty well.
It does. I'm looking forward to this year. I'm looking forward to all the Frog fans getting back out there. It's been fun talking to some of the folks that have gotten out there for these scrimmages and just chatting, talking to parents of players and all that kind of stuff too. I just think there's a really good energy around the team this year. Bill Mosiello coming back has a lot to do with that, frankly. Kirk Sarlos going back to calling pitches in games has a lot to do with that. I think that's going to be really good for this ball club as well. And if you want more TCU baseball content, my season preview series is out right now over at hornfrogblitz.com. All of it's free to read for everybody, so just go over there. You'll find all of those on the front page of the website right now. One for all the pitchers, one for the infield, one for the outfield. And then I've got a San Diego series preview coming up later this week that'll get us right into the regular season as well. So,
but go ahead and subscribe too.
Obviously subscribe because you can read the articles for free, but you want to see what the board's saying about the articles and the comments. You want to get into those comments. You want to get knee deep in those comments.
Yeah. No,
you want to hash it out.
I checked in a couple of times over the weekend and sometimes checked right back out. Sometimes read them all. But that's what I love about the board is it keeps you on your toes.
You can pick and choose what you engage with too. It's fun.
It's a blast. I love lurking around.
There are plenty of people from all walks of life with all different kinds of opinions over at hornfrogblitz.com, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly. Huge week coming up for TCU. We've got the women hosting a big game against BYU. It is the Think Pink game where you're pink in support of KYAO breast cancer awareness on Tuesday night if you show up to the arena. We've got the men hosting Oklahoma State and what is kind of a must-win game for the state of the season that they're in. And then TCU baseball will be on the road this weekend. The following weekend, you can catch the Horned Frogs at Globe Life Field for just a really, really fun tournament. Getting Michigan down here is going to be a lot of fun, and of course that Arkansas game. Lots of history between those two programs, and then Kansas State, who you won't see in the conference season.
Arkansas is playing the two teams that have eliminated them from their own regional.
Yeah.
This upcoming weekend
Delightful.
or 2 weeks in Globe Life. So get out and watch the Razorbacks just relive some agony.
Yeah.
I say that as a Razorback person.
Yeah.
In some regard.
In some regards, but we know you'll be cheering for the good guys on Saturday afternoon. I think that'll about do it. Once again, thank you to our friends at the Flying Tea Club for their support, and thank you all for supporting them, and of course to the fine folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. You'll be listening to this Tuesday morning. We'll see you Tuesday night for TCU women's basketball.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.